Last year, we had one of the most fascinating NFL free agency periods of some time because it's very rare that we ever see a potential franchise quarterback change rosters. And we saw that with multiple quarterbacks, with the likes of Tom Brady going from the New England Patriots all the way to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which ended up paying off really huge for Tom Brady's career. We saw Phillip Rivers go to the Indianapolis Colts, Jameis Winston move over to the New Orleans Saints to be their backup, which is apparently the man that's their succession plan for the future, and Teddy Bridgewater moved from the New Orleans Saints to the Carolina Panthers in his first starting job since he was a Minnesota Viking. And that in of itself seemed very irregular. Typically, a NFL team doesn't find their franchise QB of the future through free agency. Typically, it's done through the NFL draft whenever they are mesmerized by a prospect to the point where they want to draft him with an early pick or, in some cases, a middle to late round pick and groom him for the future, such as players like Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson. But for some reason, things have changed over the past 2 years. I don't know if it's the influx of quarterback talent or if it's the fact that more franchises have become more and more picky with who needs to be their quarterback under center. The standard for success is completely different for each and every roster, and we saw that about a week ago with the Los Angeles Rams electing to trade Jared Goff, who statistically seemed to be a fine quarterback, but not fine enough for the likes of Sean McVay and Les Snead, to the Detroit Lions for Matthew Stafford, and they paid a hefty price to make the upgrade to a much older quarterback. Last night we covered that Carson Wentz was on the cusp of being traded, and Adam Schefter continued to echo that sentiment earlier today. But lost amongst all of the drama is the situation that Dak Prescott finds himself in. It seems as though the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott are a ways away from agreeing on a contract extension. And today we got some pretty troubling news from a well-known Dallas Cowboys source. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. Before we get to the content, just take a moment to sack that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Every time you like my content, my videos get pushed out to more individuals that like NFL content who could come through, watch my video, and sack the like button for the YouTube algorithm. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, I'm going to start this off by letting you know that this information is a little near and dear to my heart. As a Dallas Cowboys fan, all I know is pain, because I became a Dallas Cowboys fan ever since I was young enough to understand what football is, when I was a 6-year-old in the year of 1999. And, well, those were some painful years to be a Dallas Cowboys fan, as it was the turn of our best era to the beginning of a very painful and long, what has it been, 2 decades? We're going on our 3rd decade now. And while it has been a very bumpy couple of decades, those decades have been followed by slight glimmers of hope. Hope in the form of Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, hope in the form of a remarkable wide receiver core, which on paper could be the best wide receiver core in the league, and hope behind what is quite possibly the most expensive offense that I believe we have in the entire NFL. I truly believe that on paper, the Dallas Cowboys should be a force to be reckoned with. But on paper and reality, unfortunately, are two completely separate things. Unfortunately, football isn't necessarily a video game where you just compile the best players onto a roster and simulate an entire season. Team chemistry comes into play, head coaching competence comes into play, hiring a defensive coordinator that wasn't a horrible head coach and defensive coordinator throughout his career comes into play. And I'm talking about Mike Nolan, not so much Dan Quinn. And making sure that a head coach that was carried to a Super Bowl by a NFL Hall of Fame quarterback doesn't finesse you into believing that he's a good head coach also comes into play. And, well, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, I could 100% say that once again, we fumbled the bag. Even when Dak Prescott was playing, the Dallas Cowboys were absolutely atrocious, going 2-3 in the 5 games that Dak Prescott did play, despite him playing like a MVP. The man was on track for 6,000 passing yards if he would have continued to play. But even in spite of that, the Cowboys won 2 of those 5 games, and one of those games was won as a result of a meltdown by the Atlanta Falcons, so should we really even count that? On top of that, you had information leaking out about how the head coaches clearly don't know what they're doing, and when your head coaching staff contains the likes of Mike McCarthy and Mike Nolan and Kellen Moore, who is not even a decade removed from leading Boise State to some remarkable games, then obviously there is some concern to be had. But lost amongst all of this information is the fact that Dak Prescott is up for a contract extension. Now, about a year ago, the Cowboys were in a similar situation with Ezekiel Elliott, who was essentially holding out for a large contract. So before we get to the Dallas Cowboys Dak Prescott situation, you need to understand the Dallas Cowboys salary cap situation. Currently, they have about $23 million in cap space for 2021. And to even tag Dak Prescott, you would need to be able to pay him $37.7 million. DeMarcus Lawrence has the biggest cap hit at $19 million, and the Dallas Cowboys could not necessarily cut their best defensive player. But say if they were to restructure his deal, they can save about $12 million in cap space if they execute this properly. Another player that they can restructure is their offensive guard, Zach Martin, who's got 4 years left on his contract, and even though he's not really guaranteed any salary money, he still carries a $17 million cap hit this season. Then you get to Amari Cooper, who has a $22 million cap hit, who makes him yet another candidate for restructure. Now, another option is the Dallas Cowboys could trade Amari Cooper and just move forward with Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, which personally I'm a huge fan of this deal because the Cowboys could use that extra money and focus a little bit more on their defense and actually pay Dak Prescott. And then we get to the most likely cut candidates. You have offensive tackle Tyron Smith, who is still serviceable but has been dealing with injuries, but when he's not injured, he's a remarkable offensive tackle. And then you get Jalen Smith, who is a wonderful come-from-behind story now that he's fully healthy and has been playing for the Cowboys, but I don't know if he's necessarily worth his contract. This is all very concerning because, according to Emmitt Smith, the Dallas Cowboys are very lukewarm on Dak Prescott's future and might even be willing to move on from him. So when Matthew Lennox of InsideTheStar.com asked about the status of Dak Prescott from Emmitt Smith, he said, "The only answer I can give is the Cowboys are uncertain whether or not he's the future of the Cowboys. Outside of that, if he was the complete future of the Dallas Cowboys, they would make no bones about giving him a contract." I mean, at the end of the day, Tony Romo, they was committed to Romo right off the rip, and he came in and replaced Drew Bledsoe. And I mean, he's not the biggest guy, he's not the most flashiest guy, and he's not the fastest guy either, and he had his challenges. But there was a commitment to Tony Romo. There is no commitment to Dak Prescott. This is very tough news if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, because even though Dak Prescott hasn't necessarily been perfect all the time, he's shown that when he's given a good roster around him, more times than not, he'll make the right decision, and he has plenty of room to develop into, in my opinion, a consistent Pro Bowl quarterback, and even a quarterback that could lead a team to a Super Bowl. But say the Dallas Cowboys are not necessarily committed to Dak Prescott, what would their options be here? Well, if the Cowboys aren't committed to Dak Prescott, more likely than not, it's because they simply don't have the money. Drafting a quarterback would be significantly cheaper for the Dallas Cowboys and would save them a significant chunk of money as well. Although I don't necessarily believe that is the best move for their future. If there's any lesson the Dallas Cowboys can take from the Deshaun Watson situation, it's that they should definitely do whatever it takes to appreciate the quarterback they currently have. Dak Prescott isn't Patrick Mahomes, but I think a large part of that is because Mike McCarthy isn't Andy Reid. I feel like at the same time, the Dallas Cowboys need to shift their focus away from the roster they currently have and focus a little bit more on upgrading who they have in the front office. But for now, there is a chance that the Dallas Cowboys move on from Dak Prescott. And if they do, let me know in the comment section down below. What team do you think Dak will go to? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.